Hello and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that Karl Marx couldn't account for in his dialectic. I'm Cody, and I wanted to try something a little bit different. We're kind of moving and switching around our formats a bit. We're going to be doing the regular episodes again back in a few months, but we're just trying some new things in the meantime. Now, I'm actually currently working on my top 100 games of all time, and hopefully we'll have that up in a few weeks. But in the meantime, I wanted to do something a little bit different today. I didn't want to do a top 10 list per se. What I will do is I'm looking at some of my favorite companies, board game companies, and I want to tell you what my favorite games are that these companies produce. So I'm not comparing the companies, I'm not comparing the games, I'm just saying these are some of my favorite companies and these are some of my favorite games that they produce. Now, kind of my rule in selecting this, actually I've got 11 companies that I'm going to do, and kind of my criteria for selecting these was actually finding companies that I'd played at least 3 or 4 of their games. I wanted a good variety of their games in order to kind of say which one I liked the most. Some companies I played a lot more than that, others usually right around maybe 3. But anyway, without any further ado, here are 11 companies and my favorite games that they produce. So I'm going to take the companies in alphabetical order. So first of all, I want to start with AEG. You may have noticed the Tempest series up here. I'm a big fan of the Tempest series. And I'd have to say, hands down, my favorite game from AEG is Dominaire. Dominaire is a lot of fun. It's a great game about political intrigue and the way you have to play your cards and use them on the board and line them up. The way they come into play allow you to place cubes on the board, and it is a mean game. You're constantly undercutting your friends, and it's just a tremendous amount of fun. I shouldn't say hands down. This was actually a pretty close race between that and Courtier, which is also in the Tempest series. I love Courtier as well, but I think I got to give Dominaire the slight edge. So, AEG, Dominaire. Now, Days of Wonder. Days of Wonder is another great game that they've got a lot of games I really enjoy. This is another one that kind of had me on the ropes for a bit because I love Ticket to Ride, I love Memoir 44, but I just had to give it to Shadows over Camelot. Shadows over Camelot is just this amazing game where you're Knights of the Round Table going on all sorts of quests, and of course one of you is secretly a traitor working against everybody else. So it's a cooperative game, except that one traitor, he wins if everybody else loses and nobody knows who he is. It's as much a psychological game as it is the actual game on the board in front of you. So I really enjoyed it. So Days of Wonder, Shadows over Camelot. Next up is Fantasy Flight Games. Fantasy Flight Games is just a phenomenal company. Of course, they're one of the biggest companies out there. And this is another company where, boy, I could have given you a list just on games I love from that company. But ultimately, I decided the game I went with was Twilight Imperium 3rd Edition. I love TI3. I love the big sprawling space adventure. I love the fact that you're researching technologies, you're expanding militarily, there's a political aspect to it, there's trade. It's just everything you could want from kind of a big grand space opera game is there, and I love it very much. Runner-up, I'd have to say, is Battlestar Galactica. Love Battlestar Galactica. You can check out our review for that, of course, in episode 2 of season 1 of The Discriminating Gamer. Love Battlestar Galactica, but I gotta give it to TI3. Next up is GMT Games, and GMT Games is another great company. They do a lot of kind of more, well, they do a lot of war games. Not all. I just played Thunder Alley, which is a great game about race cars. But they produce just some tremendous, tremendous titles, and I love so many of them. But I would have to say, if you put a gun to my head, my favorite GMT game is probably going to be Space Empires 4X. Again, it's that space theme I love. I love the science fiction theme. But this, as opposed to, say, Twilight Imperium, which kind of has all of these different aspects going on, Space Empires 4X is much more of a straightforward war game. And there is technology in it, and there is some economics, but it's a war game. And the way it is handled, where you don't know how many ships your enemy has, because there's a fog of war element, and then the way the battles take place, where some ships can screen other ships, so you can husband your strength. I really like it. It's just a brilliant, brilliant design. It's a lot of fun. Runner-up for GMT, it has to be either that Twilight Struggle, 1989 Dawn of Freedom dynamic there. They're both great games. Love Twilight Struggle, love 1989, but Space Empires for GMT is number one. Okay, Indie Boards and Cards. Now, Indie Boards and Cards is a fun company. They put out a lot of great stuff. I'd have to say, though, probably my favorite Indie Boards and Cards game is The Resistance Avalon. It's just so much fun. Again, it's a hidden traitor mechanic. You're trying to figure out who is who. You know, are you a spy? Are you loyal? And it's a game of deduction. It's a game of personalities, and again, you just don't know who you can trust. So that is just a tremendously fun game. The Resistance Avalon, and of course the original Resistance is a lot of fun too, but I like how in Avalon you have those other little roles that you play of Merlin and the Assassin that just add a little bit more tension to the game. So Resistance Avalon. Runner-up, I'd probably have to say, is Coup. I really like Coup. Coup is just a great light two-player, multiplayer game where you have 2 cards each, and you have to bluff and counter-bluff. It's tremendously fun. But number one for Indie Boards and Cards is The Resistance Avalon. Mayfair Games. Mayfair Games. Love Mayfair Games. Another just great company. And they've got a lot of great titles out there as well. Again, if you make me choose one, I gotta go with 2 classics coming together, and that is Star Trek Catan. You know, I've told you I love the science fiction. I love Star Trek. Who doesn't? And so I love the Star Trek theme, and I love the Settlers of Catan mechanics. You bring them together, and it's brilliant. I mean, essentially, you are playing Settlers of Catan, but of course, it's got a lot of these different little Star Trek components and maps and what have you. And of course, the roles are so much fun. You know, Captain Kirk has certain advantages. Uhura has certain advantages. Dr. McCoy, Spock, they all have certain advantages that you can do, but you can only do them temporarily. You can only do them 2 times before you'd have to turn those in and get a new role. So I love, love, love Star Trek Catan. I have to say, runner-up for Mayfair Games is probably, again, this is very tight, but Lords of Vegas. I really like Lords of Vegas. It's a great game of developing casinos in Las Vegas and trying to control them, and once you have them, take over kind of shares in the casino. Tremendously fun game, but still, my heart belongs to Star Trek, so I'm going to say Star Trek Catan. Rio Grande Games. Rio Grande Games is, you know, another wonderful game company. They put out a lot of good stuff. But my favorite game that they produced, and I believe they're the American distributor for it, but it's got their logo on it, so I'm going with it, and that is Friedrich. Friedrich, which is a light war game about Frederick the Great and the 7 Years' War in Europe. It's just tremendously fun. You maneuver little armies around the board that are connected by roads, and then when you get to battles, you actually use playing cards, you know, clubs, hearts, and so forth. You actually use those on the board if they match the area of the board you're playing in. So it's almost kind of a terrain thing. But it's just tremendously fun. You gotta put out more cards that add up to numbers than your opponents do, and whoever kind of runs out of cards first loses the battle. It's tremendously fun. Great light war game. Highly recommended. Friedrich. Again, if I had to pick a runner-up for Rio Grande Games, I'd probably have to say Space Alert. Really like Space Alert. That's just another fun science fiction game where you're on the bridge of a ship. Very different game from Friedrich, but Friedrich has my heart when it comes to Rio Grande Games. Victory Victory Point Games. Now again. You're probably gonna get tired of me saying this, but this is another great company. I love Rio Grande Games. They're a small company, but they consistently put out quality games, and there's a lot of them I just really like a lot. But I'd have to say, again, you pick just one. I'm going to go with For the Crown. For the Crown is just a tremendous play on chess. Essentially, it's two players are playing chess, but you have a bunch of different pieces on the board, and this is kind of moderated by this deck building mechanic. So essentially, the way you play cards from this deck builder allow you to put more and specific types of units on the board that you can then play against your opponent. It's tremendously fun. You can see our review for the Crown on episode 7 of Season 1 of The Discriminating Gamer. I highly recommend it. If I runner-up for Victory Point Games, oh, that's tough. I like a lot of them. They got the States of Siege engines, which are solo games. I really liked Habsburg Eclipse. I've liked all of the States of Siege games, which are solo, to a greater or lesser degree, but Habsburg Eclipse, which I played just a few months ago for the first time, really enjoyed. World War I theme, and that was a lot of fun. But For the Crown, that two-player chess deck builder, For the Crown, Victory Point Games. Okay, now I'm going to go with Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro, Avalon Hill, that whole conglomerate there, Wizards of the Coast. Again, a lot of really phenomenal games from Wizards. If I had to pick one, I'd say Conquest of Nerath. The Conquest of Nerath is just a phenomenal war game. It's a lot like Axis and Allies, which is another great title from that company, but it is fantasy. It's Dungeons & Dragons, Conquest of Nerath, and you've got wizards and dragons and it's monsters. It's just so much fun. And in addition to the war game that's going on around the board, you also have kind of these dungeon crawl adventures. I shouldn't say dungeon crawl, but you go into dungeons and you have to fight monsters in order to gain more advantages. And the more advantages you gain from the dungeons help your forces on the board. It's tremendously fun. Really enjoy it. Conquest of Nerath. If I had to put up a second one from there, I'd say probably Betrayal on House of the Hill. Betrayal on House of the Hill, again, from that Wizards, Avalon Hill, Hasbro company. Wizards of the Betrayal on House of the Hill, tremendously fun hidden trader game. Actually, not a hidden trader game; it's a revealed trader game, but it's still just a lot of fun. But the edge, I got to go with Conquest of Nerath. It's just a great light war game, and I love light war games. WizKids. WizKids puts out a lot of fun stuff too, and again, I gotta hark back to that theme. My favorite WizKids title is a play on a Fantasy Flight title. That, of course, is Star Trek Attack Wing, which is a play on Star Wars X-Wing. Now, if you put a gun to my head and ask me which I like better, Star Wars X-Wing or Star Trek Attack Wing, I'd probably say Star Wars X-Wing. But I do love Star Trek Attack Wing. There's a lot of great stuff going on in Star Trek Attack Wing. It is its own game. It really is. They've evolved differently. The cards, the situations, the things you can bring to it have become quite a bit different than what's going on in X-Wing. And of course the ships, recently played with a Borg Cube, which was a lot of fun, really scary for the Federation player. But I really like Star Trek Attack Wing. It's a fun system, fun combat, really enjoying. Great minis too. I'd have to say for runner-up for WizKids is probably Star Trek Fleet Captains. Another great Star Trek game. Tom Vazel said Star Trek Fleet Captains was Star Trek in a box. He is right. Star Trek Fleet Captains is another phenomenal game. And that's more than combat. There's missions and all sorts of fun things you can do. But I just like the down and dirty fighting, dog fighting, if you will, of the capital ships in Star Trek Attack Wing. So, WizKids, Star Trek Attack Wing. Finally, Z-Man Games. Z-Man Games, again, shut me up. I love Z-Man Games. They put out just some phenomenal stuff. And wonderful company, and I'd have to say, again, this is one where they've got so many, it's a hard time to pick just one. If I had to pick just one, though, I'd probably say Merchants and Marauders. It's a great pirate game. You're moving around the board on all sorts of missions, trying to prove or disprove rumors, but also trying to deliver goods. but you have choices in this game. It's kind of an open world sandbox kind of game. You can become a pirate yourself, or you can be an honest trader. But there's wars going on, so you got to watch out for, you know, the French or the Dutch or the English ships or the Spanish ships. And you have to make some really fun and interesting choices while you're trying to kind of best your competitors in adding up your loot. And it's just a really, really fun game. Merchants and Marauders. If I had to pick a runner-up, so sue me, I'm not a big Eurogame fan. There are some I like a lot. I'm not a huge Eurogame fan, but I gotta tell you, I really, really, really like Russian Railroads. Russian Railroads is just fun. It's heavy. It's a heavy Euro, but it's fun. I really, really like it. I know, I think Shut Up and Sit Down compared it to Doing Taxes, but I got a kick out of it. I think it's a fun, competitive game where you're trying to build different railroad lines independently of each other, and as you're doing it, you get points in how far your railroad lines go. It's a great game. But again, I just love the pirate adventure, the theme, the fullness of that kind of Ameritrash ideal that comes with Merchants and Marauders. So there you have it. There are 11 great game companies and 11 great games. So actually probably more than 11 great games, because I talked about the runners-up too. But check those games out. If you have any questions or comments, if you disagree with me or agree with me, go ahead and leave a comment here on YouTube or on our website. We'd love to hear from you. We are small, but we're growing. The Discriminating Gamer. And hopefully we'll be back, like I say, with some more kind of smaller reviews in the next few weeks, maybe. And then top 10, top 100 list coming up for me. And then down the line, again, like I say, in about a couple of months, we're going to get started with our second season with some big episodes, and we're just starting to talk about what it is we want to do, and we got some big ideas. So stick around. Thanks for joining us, The Discriminating Gamer. Like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube.
Please somebody help me on my feet again.